the way this Q&A session is going to run is I will either address myself or ask a member of our project team to answer the questions in the order that they came in. The only time that I will skip a question is if it's a duplicate of a question that we already answered. We'll just answer it obviously one time. Otherwise, we'll just move through all the questions in order, and hopefully we'll have time to get to everyone. And if there are any follow-ups, go ahead and use the chat again, and we'll do our best to notice that you've followed up with another question and get to that one as well. So the first question was, what effect will the Portland's flood protection have on the Don River floodplain that extends east along Eastern Avenue to Woodfield? Will that floodplain be reduced? So the Portland's flood protection project will reduce the flooding along Eastern Avenue. However, the recently completed Broadview and Eastern Flood Protection Project class environmental assessment, which we can link to in the chat, or if we don't have that link available, we'll follow up with it. That's intended to eliminate a small flooding in a small area that the Portland's Flood Protection Project does not address along Eastern Avenue once completed as a companion project to Portland's flood protection. The post environmental assessment planning from that Broadview and Eastern Flood Protection Project and coordination has started already with the city, with Toronto and Region Conservation Authority and Metrolinx to advance that process. The only thing I will add is it might be helpful also to take a look at the floodplain area. This is the same, this is a graphic in that same link that Michaela provided earlier, I think in the chat, that shows the area of flooding that will be addressed by Portland's flood protection. It doesn't show that area that is dealt with by the Broadview and Eastern Flood Protection, which we can follow up now where exactly that is with more material. So the next question is around the detours as outlined in the presentation that we gave to our construction liaison committee recently. Is the same maps and graphics as we just showed here. That construction liaison committee deck or presentation can be found in our document library. It's also on slide 60 of the presentation that we gave today. We can put the link to both and the visual for both in the summary from this meeting to make sure that we're clear on what we're talking about. And the question is the boundary of the detour route set by the project boundaries for Portland's flood protection and Gardner East projects? That is any extension of these detours the responsibility of the city's cycling unit? So the short answer to that question is all of these detour routes, all of these detours, excuse me, have to be approved by the City of Toronto. So any requests for more information about alternative routes or any requests for changes would go to the city. I don't know if Nathan wants to add anything. I think that's probably the full answer, but Nathan, if you're here and you'd like to add something to that, please go ahead.
I have nothing to add there.
Thanks. So again, follow up with us by email if there's a specific route that you'd like to dig in on, or follow up in the chat now if you want to ask specifically about one of the routes. The next question is, will you be able to tell us more about the plans for the sediment management area during this presentation? So again, short answer, no. However, we have in the past gone into great detail around the plans for the sediment and debris management area. We can point out where it is. If Kate, you want to flip back to, I think slide 22 is probably the best visual. The reason we're not focusing too much on that here is because, as you probably realize, there's a lot of content related to the construction, staging, and detours for the Lakeshore Boulevard East work. But in past meetings, we have gone into detail about how this works and why we need to do it. You can see there's a little bit of context here for where it is. So Lakeshore Boulevard, you can see that is the east-west road there, and then you've got the swoop up to the DVP, and Don Roadway is that north-south street. And then you can see the Don River, the existing Don River, and it flows into the Keating Channel here. So it comes down south and flows west out into Lake Ontario via the Keating Channel. In the graphic beside it, which is the design drawing for how this area will look when the sediment and debris management area is complete, you can see that the Don River at this location is widened. And the sediment and debris management area itself is that area directly to the left of that widened Don River. How it works is a longer presentation, but what I will do is link to the last presentation that we made to our stakeholder advisory committee, where we got into a little bit more detail around the final design and plans for that area. I'll find that link before the meeting is over and paste that into the chat for you. And if there's follow-up on that, we can certainly send more material. Happy to talk about that. More details available on the future status of the Harbour Lee rail line is the next question. I don't have any firm updates at this time beyond what we've shown. We are told that city staff are studying it in the context of the Broadview Extension Environmental Assessment. So this is the rail spur that we showed being redirected into the center median of the reconstructed Lakeshore Boulevard East. So there should be future updates coming from city staff, but I don't think that there's one right now that they can share. Any city staff who want to pipe up and correct me if I'm wrong, you're more than welcome to jump in.
No, I think it's David. I think you're correct.
All right,
although Cassidy has raised her hand. So. Oh,
Cassidy, did you want to add an update? Cassidy Ritz with the City of Toronto. I think Kate needs to enable her mic, so we'll give her a moment to do that.
Cassidy, you should be able to unmute now.
Hi. Oh, you're on mute.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. So I have a weird background echo that's happening. I apologize. It sounds weird for me. I don't know if it sounds weird for everybody else.
No, we're good.
Okay, there is no current update. We're still working through it, and there is a study that is ongoing, and we're hoping that we'll have that concluded later this year.
That's great. Thanks for confirming that. Much appreciated. So this individual will no doubt be following up, and you can follow up either with us or through the city, and we'll let you know what that timing is. The next question is just confirming that the future condition of Lakeshore will require exiting the Gardner back at Jarvis to access Lakeshore Boulevard East. So I think that it was maybe clarified in the chat already, but yes, that's the permanent condition when this work is completed. Dawn, I don't know if there's anything further that you'd care to add in addition to what was already shown in the presentation. It was also noted that in a similar question that it's already a busy intersection. And I would just say that the reconfiguration, it was studied, and the impacts of that were studied as part of the Gardner Expressway and Lakeshore Boulevard reconfiguration environmental assessment, which was approved in 2017. So the consultation for that, obviously a while back, and understandable that you may not have been able to participate or been aware of it at the time. Dawn, anything that you wanted to add to that answer?
Mira and Dawn can jump in, but there will be new ramps built as part of the Gardner hybrid project. So this isn't permanent. It is an interim stage until the Gardner has been relocated and the new ramps constructed. And Dawn, please correct me if I'm misstating that.
Yeah, no, that's correct. The new ramps that would just be to the east of Cherry Street would be the alternative exit of eastbound prior to hitting DVP. So, but that's
thank you for the correction. So we can provide that more detailed information about those cherry ramps. Just looking to see what the next. So the next question is about the schematic that we showed for the changes at the eastbound entrance at Jarvis to the Gardner. And the question is about closing that entrance and whether that's temporary or permanent. I don't know, Don, if you'd like to speak to that.
Sorry, when the Logan ramps are removed. So can you repeat the question again?
So closing the eastbound entrance, the Gardner eastbound entrance at Jarvis. Is
Oh,
that
right. Okay. Yeah, my understanding that decision has not been confirmed. That's something that would be monitored.
okay? Anyone at the city have any further clarification on that?
Hi, Mayor, it's Nathan here. So currently the on-ramp is closed until 2024. And it's still to be determined if the city is going to reopen it post 2024.
Thanks, that's helpful. So the next question is, when is the plan, sort of similar question about timing on the other changes to ramps. When is the plan to build the new eastbound off-ramp at Yonge, as it will change the Jarvis intersection as well, removing the current Jarvis off-ramp? So I don't know that there's any specific timing that Nathan or anyone else could share regarding the DVP ramp realignment. I think that's the start is a few years out for that.
That's correct. The project date for that is still to be determined as well.
It's Cassidy. The one thing that I would add is that we don't anticipate that those ramps will be removed until some of the Gardner works advances. So we're working very closely and doing some additional traffic modeling and due diligence in terms of the construction timing and staging for all of the various different works that are going to be happening down in this area. So we don't have a firm answer today as to when various pieces are going to advance, but we're working towards getting a more comprehensive picture.
That's great, thank you. And I think after this meeting, what we can also add to our summary are a couple of links for anyone who might want to sign up for other sources of information from City on some of these future works, so that you can get notifications of any future meetings or updates on timings for these projects. There are obviously other projects outside of the work that we're presenting today that all relate to this. The next question is, how do residents living near or east of Jarvis get on the DVP? So Don walked through some of the maps there showing how the eastern ramps would be the best option. You could also use the Bay Street eastbound on-ramp in the short term. I don't know if there's a follow-up on that, or if the presentation clarified that. If you would like a follow-up or still unclear about the best route, I think Kate's flipping her way over to that map just to show what I'm describing. There you go. We can certainly elaborate. So go ahead and please use the chat if you have a follow-up question or it's still not clear exactly how to navigate this. The next question is, are you pre-alerting Google Maps and Waze to all of these changes? Yes. We will absolutely upload those changes as they're happening and make sure that we get that information available to people in as many formats as possible. Next question, any noise impact information during the removal? So we did review that in the presentation. If Kate, you want to just flip quickly back to that slide for the benefit of anyone who's not participating in this meeting who might be watching this recorded Q&A session and didn't catch that information in the presentation. So on weekends, while the ramp removal is taking place, yes, there will be some noise, but as we identified on the graphic that Kate is flipping towards, the residential areas are relatively far away from where those ramps are and where the work would be taking place. They're certainly significantly further than some of the residential areas that were nearby to the more recent work on the western portion of the Gardner. So this is the visual in the presentation that you could go back to if you'd like to take a closer look based on where it is that you live. And if you have a specific question still after having reviewed this, you should absolutely email us and raise your concern with us, see if we can get you a more detailed answer there. Next question. What will the impacts of roadwork and traffic mitigation be on the buildings and properties east of Carlaw Avenue? Will driveways be impacted for buildings at the Lakeshore Boulevard East and Leslie Street intersection? Or will there be road closures near Lakeshore Boulevard East and Leslie? No, there will be no impacts of that sort east of Carlaw. Next question, relating to the north side minor intersections between Booth and Carlaw, so Logan Morse, future East Harbor Streets, what, if any, traffic calming measures will be implemented to prevent southbound to westbound autos from rolling through their stop signs and bars and into the pedestrian sidewalk and multi-use trail? And there's more detail for context here as part of this question. This is an historic issue at these locations, including Booth presently, where drivers coast through the stop looking for gaps in traffic to the left or east, running over cyclists and pedestrians with right-of-way coming from the west. My review of the design doesn't indicate any elements which would mitigate this problem. And the request is that the pedestrian and multi-use trail crossings of these minor intersections be raised or tabled to make it clear to drivers that these crossings have the right-of-way, and to make it uncomfortable for those who fail to fully stop. So if we go back to slide 28, which we've already done, you can see, well, this is the final condition. I think the question is more during construction, unless I'm misunderstanding the question, actually. Is this a question about the final condition? It's closed during construction, this intersection. So it would be, the question is about the final state. Thank you for clarifying. So if it's a question about the final state, what I'm going to suggest is, because it's a detailed question, let me take it back to the full project design team, and we'll include that answer along with a helpful visual in the meeting summary. You can also reach out to us directly, and we can follow up with you about this, but we will include the question and the more detailed answer with the summary from this meeting. So next question. Is there a long-term view to reduce or create dedicated routes for large truck traffic in the area? There are studies that the city is conducting that look at the broader area in terms of truck movements. I don't know, Cassidy, if you have any insight or updates related to those studies. I don't think you're directly involved, but you may have some more info than I do.
Sorry, Mira, I missed the question. What was the question?
Oh, no worries. Is there a long-term view to reduce or create dedicated routes for large truck traffic in the area? And I was just saying, I know there are some long-term studies that are being conducted around truck movements.
Yeah, so as part of the Portland's planning framework and the creation of what we called the Portland's official plan modification, there was a policy to advance a goods movement strategy for the area. And one of the things that goods movement strategy is looking at is dedicated truck routes in and through the Portland's area. And that study is actually underway. I don't have a precise timing in terms of when it will be done, but it is something that is actively being looked at by the city.
Thanks, that is helpful. And again, obviously, I know sometimes we point to projects or work that's outside of the scope of what we're presenting here today, but if there's follow-up from this meeting and you'd like to know who's the best contact to continue to get information on that particular work, you can always go through Waterfront Toronto, and we'll do our best to connect you with the appropriate people on the city side for things like that. So the next question is, with traffic from the west redirected east and up Carlaw or Booth to Eastern, and then west along Broadview to access the DVP, how will the major reconstruction of the Eastern Avenue Bridge by Metrolinx be accommodated? So I know that we do have someone representing Metrolinx joining us at this meeting. If you'd like to field this question, feel free to jump in. And if not, what I can share is that we don't yet know the timing for the Ontario Line and related works, and that's something that I think Metrolinx is still working on. So this would be City of Toronto working with Metrolinx to coordinate project implementation and timing.
I'd also like to add that traffic will only be rerouted during the weekend for the ramp demolition. So that's 5 consecutive weekends starting September.
Right, so it wouldn't impact, yeah.
Exactly. So during the weekday, the DVP to northbound can still be accessed from Don Roadway, and in a week, and it's still accessible during the Lakeshore reconfiguration project.
That's an important clarification, Nathan. Thanks. Next question, wanting to confirm for a driver getting on the Gardner westbound from the Carlaw Lakeshore area, Jarvis would be the first on-ramp. For right now, yes, that's correct. Next question is, what is the timeline for public realm improvements between Jarvis and Cherry? I'm not sure that there is a timeline, a specific timeline established or confirmed yet for that piece of work, unless Nathan, you know otherwise.
Sorry, Mayor, could you repeat that?
Yeah, of course. This is the work further west between Jarvis and Cherry on public realm improvements. So the Lakeshore Boulevard public realm design that's been approved.
I don't have the timeline. I would need to consult with somebody from the Waterfront Toronto team.
Yeah, so we'll follow up on that and clarify whether there is a firm timeline associated with that. I don't believe that there is. Question about the Logan Bridge. Can we confirm or clarify what the future condition will be? Presumably this is the bridge on Lakeshore over the Don River that's being, is that what we're talking about here? And the question is, what will be the future condition? Is the elevated overpass coming down to meet Lakeshore across the river? So we can pull up the diagram again of the bridge, the reconstructed bridge, if that's helpful. I think the question is, what, where does it come down, right? Where do we start to be at grade? Don, you might be able to clarify what that looks like in the future.
Well, yeah, so the yellow on the previous slide showing the Logan ramps, they're being removed forever. So there will be no access from the Gardner through this area, and that access will be further to the west, just to the east of Cherry Street. So effectively the Logan ramps here are being moved west, closer to Cherry Street.
Yes, hopefully that's helpful. The question was really about the ramps. My apologies. I was having a bit of a hard time decoding that one, and we've got some other folks in the chat that are helping me out. So thank you for helping clarify what the question was about. And I think that probably does answer it. So a follow-up question about getting to the DVP from the Jarvis area. Question is, did you take into consideration that there are going to be a lot more people living in the East Bayfront area, making it incredibly challenging to get to the DVP from their neighborhood? The again, short answer is yes, the future populations in these neighborhoods would have been considered during the studies. I don't know, Dawn, if you have any insight, or Cassidy, into exactly.
So why am I paying $300?
Whoops. I think there might be a follow-up question coming in the chat, which is fine.
Well, yeah, so I guess just building on that, Myra, that the modeling done for the construction period is relatively near term, so out for the next 4 years. So there will be some changes, but the much longer term growth would happen after the construction for this project is completed, and any future decision about closing down the Jarvis Street on-ramp, I think that decision would be made in the context of growth happening in the area. So,
Dawn, I think the other response to that is that we will be able to go north on the DVP from eastbound Lakeshore Boulevard in the future. So when that intersection is reconstructed, or when the bridge is reconstructed, there will be a left turn lane. So people coming from Keating and East Bayfront can just travel along the Lakeshore Boulevard to the Dawn Roadway and turn left to go north. So that's another option that doesn't currently exist.
That's a good additional information. And I think it's also difficult because, so much of this is being phased. So what we're showing as final condition for this project in 2024 and 2025 is not the final overall condition. And I think it would probably be helpful for us also to produce a visual that kind of gives a sense of what some of those big moves relating to access to the DVP and Lakeshore will be, so that there's a better sense of what the overall plan is for that access. So the next question is about the Cherry Street cycle paths. Could we get into more detail about the new paths and timeline for access to those changes? What will the crossing of Cherry Street look like for cyclists continuing east-west? And noting that it went by a little bit fast, which is understandable. So here are those maps again, and maybe we can quickly review just what the situation will be like for cyclists crossing Cherry Street east-west during the various stages. I don't know, Don, if you're able to just sort of flip through the different stages with particular attention to that movement.
Yeah, I think, Mara, that we don't have a detail about showing the cycle improvements along Cherry to show that connection between Villiers and Lakeshore. We don't have an
Not
image
a zoom in, not a zoom in, no. But we could follow up with that.
Yeah.
Why don't we go ahead and do that? We do have drawings that kind of zoom into the street. These are obviously too high level to give you a sense of the minutia of that movement, other than that you can get across as is shown here. So we can certainly, in the summary from the Q&A session, add that visual so that it's super clear what that movement will look like. And then if you have a follow-up question, once you understand a little bit better, you obviously be encouraged to reach out to us and we'll answer it there.
Mira and Don, can you hear me?
Yep.
It's
John.
John McKee. I think it's important to note that the full reconstruction of the final condition at Cherry and Lakeshore would be completed in October of this year before that cycle detour is put in place. So I just thought it was important to note that the final
really
condition, which is the upgraded cycling facility, will be in place before the detour is open.
Yeah, and that's part of the planning process for making these detour routes work as best as possible. So I think showing that drawing of what the final design is for that intersection and that movement will be helpful.
Yep.
Okay. What will the impact be to the flow of traffic in the area east of Carlaw Avenue or around Lakeshore and Leslie? So we addressed a similar version of that question, except not specifically around flow of traffic. So we mentioned that there wouldn't be any closures. We do have some information about what the flow of traffic will be through the intersections at Carlaw and Leslie. I don't know, Don, if you want to give a quick summary of what that modeling tells us, and then if there's more detail required, we can follow up.
Yeah, so I guess the quick answer, so in the AM period where the demand is primarily moving westbound, that we're going to see some additional queue links just east of Carlaw because of the reduction in number of lanes through the Lakeshore and the bridge reconstruction area. But in the PM, we're going to see less volumes moving through Leslie Street, again, because of what we call as the metering effect of the reduction in lanes further to the west. So on the operation of the Leslie Street intersection during construction, at least, will actually improve generally over base conditions.
That's great. And if there's a follow-up on that, that's a pretty high-level response or a specific concern about a movement through that area, go ahead and put that in the chat and we can follow up. Meantime, we do have one graphic, just going back to the previous, question, that shows that multi-use trail that Shannon just posted about in the chat along the west side of Cherry Street. And Kate will pull that up quickly, and then maybe, John, you can just walk through what that movement looks like. While we're working on that, I'll go to the next question to keep us moving through the questions, and we'll get that graphic up when we can. So the next question is, when will the Lower Don Trail bridge to and from Lakeshore be replaced? You can actually see on slide 36 what the final condition will be. That bridge won't be replaced. The cycle crossing will be on the new bridge that's crossing Lakeshore. And here we go with the other graphic. I'll just finish that quick answer. So the plan is when we widen the Lakeshore Bridge that crosses the Don River, the cycling connections will be made on that new bridge. And there's no specific timing for when that would be open. It's going to be completed in 2025 along with the rest of this work. So looking at this graphic, this just gives you a better sense, to go back to the previous question for a moment, of what the bike facilities at the new intersection of Cherry and Lakeshore will look like. It doesn't go all the way down to the connections further south, but you see what a cyclist would do to come north-south and to get east-west here. I don't know, John, if you want to quickly walk through what those various movements are here.
Sure. On the north side of Lakeshore Boulevard, there's existing cycle lanes northbound and southbound on the east and west side. On New Cherry Street, south of Lakeshore Boulevard, it'll be a new multi-use trail on the west side of the road, bi-directional. So they'll be connected with a crossing on Lakeshore Boulevard. So that'll be the north-south, and then it'll be a direct crossing. There will be no jogging to the west. And I think the current crossing on Old Cherry Lakeshore is about 3 separate crossings. This will be a single crossing of Lakeshore Boulevard, and this will be in place. So this is starting construction essentially right now and will be done, scheduled as mid-October. So when we open the detour, this will be in place.
Thanks, John. And the follow-up question is, how does that connect with the sort of what is NE Northeast track that is currently there? Is that being replaced by only south side?
Sorry, I don't understand the question. So let's northeast track. Oh, the piece going up underneath the rail yards, etc. That will be closed. So west of the Cherry, sort of northwest of the Cherry Lakeshore intersection, that trail will be closed, and will be diverted to, if you're going north, to Cherry and Mill Street. If you're going east, it'll be through the Portlands for the duration. Down Cherry to either Villiers or Commissioners and across. Yeah.
Thanks, John. And hopefully that did help clarify a little bit. And please continue to post your follow-ups as much as you need for that one. So moving to the next question I have here. Will the off-ramp from the Gardner just west of Cherry result in traffic backing onto the Gardner ramp, possibly creating a safety hazard for cars looking to go north on the DVP? So to clarify this question, is this related to the final design with the new Cherry Street ramps? If you can go ahead and clarify that in the chat, just to give us a sense of what this question relates to. Yes, okay. Just making sure I'm correctly understanding the question there. So the new ramps are east of Cherry. I don't know if anyone on the team wants to jump in and just provide that further clarification to answer that question.
So I would just say, Myra, that the new ramp design east of Cherry is still ongoing. So detailed design is still happening right now. And certainly the design of the ramps and queue lengths and backups and concerns about safety risks is certainly being considered as part of detailed design. So
Thanks. Very helpful. The next question is about active TO. So the question is, active TO, which are those closures for recreational cycling and for pedestrians east of Lakeshore and Leslie, will that be stopped as the new weekend closures combined with closures on Lakeshore for active TO will be very frustrating to residents and customers of retail? So what I know about what's going on with active TO through this area, it does typically, or it did last year, run through October. It could be canceled between Leslie Street and Woodbine starting in September if needed for this reason. Active TO is going to make a decision on that in the coming weeks. And I don't know, Nathan, if you've got any further information on what's happening with that.
No, we're still waiting for confirmation from active TO.
Great, thanks. And we'll provide updates like that with our notices moving forward. So if there's related, our related closures or information that we feel would be a useful update, we'll certainly keep that in mind. The next question is, there's a commercial property with Canadian Tire and other retailers at Lakeshore Boulevard and Leslie Street. I wanted to see how this property might be impacted by this ongoing construction and road work. And then in parentheses, if the driveways will be closed and impacted. So no, the driveways will not be closed. There shouldn't be any limit to access into that complex. And all of the road work is west of Carlaw. So, you know, there may be some traffic impacts, you know, in the broader area beyond that zone. Beyond Carlaw, but not in the way of closures or impact to access to those businesses. And if you have specific questions about that exact location, you can put them in the chat and follow up, or we can have follow up with you afterwards as well to answer more detailed questions if they're specific to that. I don't have any other questions in my queue? I noticed a couple, or one person at least asked about hands up, and I think it was clarified that it's best to put your question in the chat. If you're still working on that, or if there's still a question, we'll wait a few moments for anyone who's got any final questions or follow-ups on. Chris has a question above. I'm going to scroll up. Apologies, Chris, if we missed that one. Oh, what is the red dotted line in slide 22? So if are we on slide 22 here? No. That is that's a good question.
I can answer that. Yeah.
John, go ahead.
When we're completed the bridge, the cycle track on the north side of it's the Lakeshore Boulevard cycling track will come across Lakeshore Bridge on the west side, and that would be the connection. I believe that's the connection to the Lower Don Trail as it comes in from the north, which will be available. Whether or not it's open, it will depend on the city, but we have plans to connect the new multi-use trail on the bridge to the trail as it comes down from the north.
Sorry, John. No, the red line is actually the
harbor lead.
Yeah, the harbor lead line,
Okay.
and it's not red for any particular reason, other than it's currently closed.
Chris has suggested that maybe a legend could be added for when this presentation is posted, and I agree. Since we caused some confusion there, so thanks to both for the responses, and we'll make a note that when we post this, we should add a little note about what that is. And then we'll just give a couple more minutes for anyone else, since we do have a few minutes left, and Some people may be working on some questions. Again, just still digesting what we've been talking through. And thanks everyone for your patience with this format. We know that it's not necessarily ideal, although we hope that there's some benefit just in terms of convenience for more people being able to join us maybe than would have otherwise been available. One thing I should add while we're waiting for any other questions that might come through, in terms of future outreach, we have, of course, been meeting virtually, similar to our colleagues at the City of Toronto and others. And we will look for possibilities, opportunities to do some actual in-person conversations about some of this work outside with our pop-up tent, if it's possible, over the coming weeks and maybe even into September. That's something that our team is really keen to do. It's just a matter of making sure that we're following, obviously, public health guidelines and recommendations. So we'll post those types of updates on the project page. We'll also follow up with some information for those who don't have it already about how to sign up to get our notices so that you'll know when future meetings are in person or otherwise. So we do have another final question here. Hold on, because I've got two and I have to scroll back up. So Chris, just to start with, asked if a railing can be added for cyclists to hold onto at the red light at the new intersection at Dawn Roadway and Lakeshore. So this is a question, Chris, about the final condition for that intersection. I'm not sure the team would have an answer right now, but I can certainly take that question back and they'll put the answer in the meeting summary, along with a visual of what that final condition would look like if we have it. The next question, the Cherry Street intersection should be made much safer for cyclists. The experience is very frightening right now. Also, could you please use Waterfront Toronto's signature Olivio streetlights for the roadway lighting on Lakeshore Boulevard? So the Cherry Street intersection, we've talked a little bit about how it's being reconstructed and will be reconstructed relatively soon. We can share some of those specific graphics, including the one that we shared earlier. And then what we'd be happy to do is have a follow-up conversation using those graphics to walk through what it is that's being done, and then take some comments away. And depending on where your concerns lie, maybe something that gets passed along colleagues at the City of Toronto, or if it falls within the scope of this project, we'll pass it along to our team at the same time. The Olivia streetlights, I know we have Shannon on the line, and she would likely be able to address, if we can unmute her, that question.
We cannot actually use the Olivia streetlights. They're not approved by Toronto Hydro Street Lighting. They are not an approved fixture, and they will not become an approved fixture. So no, unfortunately, we are not able to use Waterfront or the signature pole and light for any of the future streets, Lakeshore or otherwise.
That is the answer to the question about the Olivia lights. The follow-up question is, why were they approved for other parts of the waterfront? Which I don't know, David, if you want to elaborate or answer that question, or if we have an answer.
Why the Hydro has determined that they won't approve them any longer, I cannot answer that question.
We could always pass your question along. We're happy to pass your question along to Toronto Hydro if you want to send that to us in an email. I don't know if they would have an answer either, but it's just not something that we can answer.
Mira, that's something that we can also look into from a city perspective. There are other projects that we have in the city where there is different lighting standards that are applied, and we typically have to enter into operating and maintenance agreements with them, so we can look into further into why we weren't able to do that here.
Amazing, thanks, Cassidy. And finally, a reminder, because I did not post the link as promised to that recent presentation that includes some details about the sediment and debris management area. And there it is in the chat right now. for those who are interested to review those details. If once you've gone through it, if you have any questions for us, again, we'd be happy to follow up. And our team is always happy to get into the nerdy technical details of some of these pieces. Feel free. With that, we're just about at time, so we would have time to take one final question if there is one, and if not, we will take follow-up questions by email. Seeing no one typing, I think we're going to go ahead and close this meeting off. There's the email in the chat for how to reach out to us directly. We'll also post on the project website, portlandco.ca, all the ways that you can follow up with us, as well as posting this presentation, which has links in it for the ways to contact us and connect with us for this project. Thanks again to everyone for joining us. Thanks again to everyone for working with us in this venue, in this format, and we hope that we're going to see you in person next time.